The short answer to the question in the title is yes, but not in the way that most people think it is. Across language learning communities in the world, most learners tend to focus on two things: grammar and vocabulary. But there is a third component to a native speaker's English that is often missing from language courses and one-to-one tutoring. And that factor is the feeling of the language. The feeling of the language is critical to our understanding today. I need you to understand that the feeling of the language precedes one's ability to verbalize their ideas. You can target it in your own first language. Think something in your first language. Think just one phrase, and notice that while constructing that phrase, you had to actually verbalize something. So there was something that came before the words that you enwrapped that phrase in. And that something was an energetic signature of that phrase. It was ephemeral. It's hard to put your finger on it, but nonetheless, it exists. Unless we focus on that feeling of the language, unless we make it explicit and talk about it and try to understand it, as invisible as it may be, we won't be able to develop that native-like fluency and accuracy in our language, no matter how many grammatical structures and collocations we may know. I want to give you a little analogy. Imagine you are someone who really loves trees, so you want to grow a nice big pine tree. So you get that little pine seed, you go out there into your garden and you plant that seed into the ground. Every morning you walk out of your house and you water that seed. In time, it will start developing a trunk. It will be a little sapling at first, but then it will grow. It start developing the root system and the branch system. And then later on, it will grow into a full-on pine tree, and you'll be very happy with it. But now imagine someday you actually choose to grow an oak tree. But all you have is pine seeds. Imagine in this world where we're talking about this analogy with trees, you are not very aware that to grow an oak tree, you need an oak seed, an acorn. So what you actually do is you grab a pine seed and you plant it into the ground. But instead of expecting it to grow into a full-on pine tree, you expect it to grow into an oak tree. So every morning you walk out of your house and you water that seed with the very same water that you watered your pine tree with. And then in time, it starts growing up and it starts developing a trunk, which is somehow alike to the pine tree's trunk. And it will also start developing some root system, which is very similar to the pine tree system, and some branch system. But in time, you will start noticing that it no longer resembles an oak tree. What it is right now is a pine tree. So you've got another pine tree. Imagine you learn a lot about branches and the root systems and what oak trees look like. So perhaps you walk up to that pine tree one day and you start carving the leaves with some little tiny scissors so that the leaves start looking like oak tree leaves. Well, you see where I'm heading to. What I'm trying to say is that in this analogy, your seed is the feeling of the language that you have, the language that you want to grow. The water is the techniques and tricks that you apply to that learning process. So in other words, that is the practice that you involve yourself in every time you learn the language. And then the root system is perhaps the grammar, as well as the branches, and then the leaves that come up and just perhaps some species that come to nest in that tree. Those would be the words and the vocabulary that would define the specific sounding of that tree. But unless the seed is of the tree that you want to grow, you won't ever be able to grow a tree that is consistent with the tree that you want to grow. I need you to notice that in your first language, there are sometimes energetic signatures that you want to verbalize that are non-existent in other languages. Have you ever had this conversation with a foreign friend when you were trying to get him to understand something that you express, you and your people who share your language, in your language very well, but they could not get the idea of it? The reason for that was that they did not have the energetic signature for that particular part of reality that you were describing. For example, in English we have a word outdoors. In Russian, we just can't convey that in one word. That word communicates something outside your home, something that also includes a proactive element to it, something fun and exciting that you tend to do just among the trees, somewhere in nature, that you just can't do inside. But in Russian, we can definitely express that, but we can just say it in a couple of words. We could say «вне дома», or we could say «не дома», or «во дворе». But still, if you're a speaker of Russian and you just understood everything that I said in Russian, you will be able to get that it's not exactly the same. There is still a tint to outdoors that is not the same as in the Russian variant, the corollary of it. Now let's have a grammar example. For example, in English we have present perfect. That is a grammatical phenomenon that is missing from Russian or Ukrainian. If we want to become proficient users of present perfect, the first thing that we need to do is to understand why use present perfect at all. In order for us to do that, we need to create a feeling distinction for that tense. We really need to feel into the need that would come up as an energetic signature for a verbalization that would come forward as present perfect. It's very difficult to put those feeling distinctions into words. They need to be developed and created. Some distinctions will be present in your first language. For example, there are feeling distinctions for parts of reality such as a bike, a painting, a microwave, a TV set. I'm pretty sure most languages will have a distinction for those objects or elements of existence. But others won't, like outdoors and present perfect. Therefore, it's very difficult to rely on translation to bear fruit when we speak English, when we want to become like native speakers. It is absolutely possible to become a native speaker in another language. But the thing that you need to bring to your awareness is, how do I practice my feeling of this language? Personally, I get a lot of feedback from people telling me that they think that my English is very fluent and sounds like a native speaker's one. Honestly, when I speak English, my mind thinks in a different fashion. It's almost as if I'm able to find other ways of enwrapping my thoughts in English words, which is very different from the Russian language. Therefore, you might hear when someone speaks English that their language is somehow unnatural. Maybe you feel that the word order is wrong or lacking or somehow erroneous, or you might just feel that some words are not very accurate and then some grammar is violated, and for a native speaker it might be difficult to really understand how to describe the grammar of their language. But having said that, it's very easy for a native speaker to just put their finger on something that is blatantly wrong to them. I've got a few videos on this channel that may help you to master distinctions. Check those out. English is a feeling, the difference between a native speaker's and a non-native speaker's mind. Learn to rely on experience, not translation. You will learn more about the process of development of this feeling. In my one-to-one lessons, I spent quite a bit of time with my students to help them develop this sense of how a native speaker thinks, how a native speaker understands reality. Because the way we understand reality is very much determined by the language we speak and vice versa. So literally, the way we see reality is quite different depending on the language we speak. The final point I'm going to mention is rather controversial. You may not like it, and I totally understand it. It's the factor of inclination, the innate ability. I understand that taking inclination as a factor in how well a person may do something or work out a skill is a scary thing. And that the reason for that is that there is so much inequality in our nowadays society at the moment that we're trying to do our best on a daily basis to reduce the amount of inequality. There is so much stress over this inequality that just getting that other factor that is beyond our control in this game is honestly terrifying, especially when it comes to something that we do for a living. I was born to a family where my mother was super gifted at working with languages. She had that innate understanding of how a language works. She was very good at writing and spelling and saying things correctly and just stressing words in the right way. She did not ever have to learn any rules to learn that. it was something that you picked up very naturally, just simply by the process of growing up, and that's it. Some people can do it and others can't. But don't take this message as a discouraging one, because you can still practice, and the quality of practice that you do will help you grow your tree more or less effectively. Think of the quality of the practice that you uptake as the quality of the water that you use to feed your plant with. If the water is muddled, if it's dirty, if it has few nutrients, what are the chances of you growing your tree into a healthy and a beautiful specimen? Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it useful. My name is Lilia, and if you're interested in having private lessons with me, you can find my email address in the description box down below. I'm very grateful to you for watching this video until the end, and I hope to see you again on my channel. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again very soon.